I think people overthink wine a lot, and it really is, like, especially in Japan, where people tend to overthink everything, and everyone wants to pair it with something, but at the end of the day, it really is just something to enjoy. I sort of did a test with Imeguro pre-COVID. It seemed to work pretty well, where it was just like, a small bar, and you do like really token, like 500 yen tastings, and people could sort of enjoy the wine and leave. And I'd say like 90% of people would purchase a couple of bottles or maybe more, which is the whole. It's sort of like. It was a cellar door concept, and obviously it's not like a unique idea that I had or anything like that, but it was at the time kind of unique to Japan, where Japan doesn't have like a really well-established wine industry. Like, it's very nascent, and because Australian wine is not well known here, especially when I started, it was my little idea to do it, and like I said, it worked pretty well. In the store we're sitting in right now, it hasn't really translated to the point where we no longer do tastings anymore. We just sell, like, basically it's a regular bar, and there was just no demand for it really. People come here just to get drunk, I think, mainly, like it unfortunately, so it hasn't really, unfortunately, the concept doesn't really fly that good. Although I must say that, like, every time I go to a shop now, they're doing pretty much what I did. So it is interesting that a lot of other places have emulated what I did, including the brand new Interwine wine shop, which is probably the best wine shop in Japan now, in terms of the selection of wine they have, and it's a good client of ours. And they have like exactly the same, like 5 seats, or I think it might be 6 seats, sorry, and you can do like a pairing, so it's like a really small pour of nice wine and a really small dish. A lot of the wines that we import, they're more on the natural side. So, like, the fact is, like, every bottle might taste different on a different day. It will taste different as it gets oxidized over the period of a few days. So, I don't really believe in like traditional tasting notes and stuff like that. So, of course, like, a wine should reflect its place, and also some would argue it's cépage, or like grape. But even that's like sort of debated. Like, the French consider the place the most important thing, whereas basically everyone else considers the actual cépage the most important factor. But I think the truth probably lies somewhere in between. I mean, wine's great because you can enjoy it like for an anniversary or for a really special occasion. It's probably the only alcohol that genuinely lives and evolves. So it's, you can buy a couple of cases for your children's birth year and like enjoy that with them when they turn like 18 or 20, 21. So yeah, it can be a special occasion type thing, but it can also just be something that you're having while cooking. Like, it doesn't need to be that special.
If the world would end tomorrow, what wine would you drink? Like, it's like your last meal.
I want to try like DRC, which is arguably the most famous wine on earth. I'm going to try Petrus soon, which is another really, really famous, like $10,000 bottle. Luckily, a friend is generous enough to share that with me because it's nothing I could afford on my own. But yeah, DRC is the one that everyone sort of raves about. And yeah, that can range from about $10,000 to like $30,000 a bottle, right? Depending on the vintage and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that would be the one. But if it was more realistic scenario, then I'd probably just go for like a nice champagne, like Bollinger or Krug. Krug's probably my favorite. Salon is the best one I've had, but that's, again, I don't feel that's good value, even if it's the end of the world when they get value for some reason. But yeah.
More expensive, the better?
Yeah, of course. I mean, generally speaking. But I mean, once you get to a certain price, like after probably $1,000, there's no difference in quality, right? You know what I mean? So it's once it gets to that price point, that's just a scarcity thing. So it's just basic economics.
And I read somewhere that if you don't know much about wine, you can judge a lot by its cover.
Well, so, you know, if you look at our portfolio, you'll see that a lot of the branding is strong, but that's a totally different conversation. I just think it's, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a product. So, like, you're going to eat an apple that's black or one that looks nice and shiny. So, you know, the reason that apples look like that is actually not very good because they're covered in wax and it's kind of gross, right? That's why you really should peel apples before you eat them. You know, going back to my fruit origins, the label should reflect your product in some way. So, you know, a lot of our winemakers are a lot younger generation, so their labels are a lot more pop and artsy. And I do have some labels that are quite classic. And I do think that it's interesting balance, isn't it? Because if your label is too out there, it puts some people off, I think. Like, it's hard, like, even for me, if a label's like really kind of crazy, like a lot of the French and Italian natural wine labels will have like just like a woman's leg spread. Like, that's the label. And it's just like, I don't know, like, that's kind of hard pitch for me to pay like a lot of money for that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just hard to take it seriously a little bit.
I think we can just get on with our wrap-up questions. What do you miss about Australia?
You know, I'm pretty acclimatized to living in Japan, obviously, after a long time. But it still really does like bug the shit out of you sometimes. So I think it really is quite important as an expat. I don't care which country you're living in, so this is not a Japan thing. Because whenever you're sort of a foreigner or an outsider, I think it's really hard to fully acclimatize for first generation people, at least. And so I think it's important just to take a break, a cultural break. So, you know, if you're in America, you might want to go to Mexico, or, you know, it can be like a real reset. And then you start to appreciate the things. And, you know, so yeah, I miss Australia a lot. What I miss mainly is just the lifestyle. Work-life balance is better. Salaries are more generous. I mean, people are much more friendly. So it's a lot easier to sort of make relationships. I don't know now that I'm like 40, it might be a bit more difficult, right? Everyone's got families and stuff. But my general perception of Australia is that, yeah, people are pretty friendly and nice. And it's just a more laid back thing. Like, I just feel like there's a lot less pressure. And, you know, there's a lot more space. People are less like possessive of things. Like, you know, if you use someone's driveway to turn around in Australia, no one's going to be chasing you with like a rake, which happens here in Japan. Yeah. And yeah, you're not living on top of each other. So even if you're like sort of in the heart of Melbourne and Sydney, your apartment's probably like 3 times bigger than if you do an average thing. So yeah, I think a lot of people misconceptualize like costs and stuff like that and say Australia's expensive, but you get what you pay for. Like, you're getting a lot more space and a better standard of living. So yeah, okay, some things are expensive, but I mean, just like any country, some things are expensive. Like, you can spend like $100 on a mango here. Like, it's pretty expensive when it's free in Australia. It's fall off trees, right? So yeah.
What's your favorite Japanese word or phrase?
Oh, I like shogunai. And that's my favorite phrase, which, you know, if in English just means like can't be helped or too bad. And then my favorite word is definitely ripper. So ripper means like really good or great. And it sort of was borrowed into Australian. So now Australians use that as like a slang, but it originated from the Japanese language.
What's your favorite Japanese food or restaurant?
This is one of the best things about it in Japan. The food here is epically good. The standard of food is so high. Okay, right now with the insane labor shortage, you can kind of you're starting to have like some bad experiences, which sucks. My favorite Japanese food, I just say kaiseki. So, you know, basically traditional Japanese food. So, yeah, my best eating experiences have been like at Ryotai, like the famous like Kicho, for example. And yeah, it's more than just a meal. It's like a full like cultural experience. You get a private room, you know, everyone's wearing like $20,000 kimonos. It's like a 10-course meal. But yeah, I guess my favorite restaurant is Koguma in Ginza. So similar kaiseki. or like traditional Japanese food. So, his menu is changing with the season. I don't know. I've been there 3 or 4 times, I think. And I just love the owner chef. You sit at like a little counter. It's very personal. And for me, what was really impressive, was the first time I went there, he just took so much time and effort to explain to me in Japanese, like the food, like every dish, including like, this fish comes from this small part of this small river in Kyoto that only lives there. Like, this insanely awesome experience. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Koguma, but good luck trying to get in there. It's pretty tough.
And I think this will be the last question. So I usually end the interview with, like, do you have any advice for the rest of the Gaijin living or visiting?
The type of people who live here as foreigners are really interesting. They're not normal. Like, you could probably say that about anywhere, but, I think the expats here are definitely an interesting sort of group of people. I'm not talking about like someone who just got sent here by their consulting firm or by their bank or by Amazon. You know what I mean? People who deliberately chose, like, because, if you live here, you're basically sacrificing massively financially, because salaries in Japan is horseshit. They've always been horseshit and they always will be horseshit, basically. It's how the society is structured. So a lot of people, who are working in certain industries are like deliberately, effectively taking significant lower pay. I mean, the perfect scenario here is if you get like American dollars, or you get like a foreign salary and you're based in Japan. That, for me, that would be like the most amazing experience. If anyone gets an opportunity, as a person who's lived here in Japan for a long time, take that opportunity. That's going to be awesome. But even in working for a foreign, people who work for the Australian government here are like killing it, because we pay our public servants so high, right? And even if they're like a local hire, which gets paid a little bit less, it's still like astronomical compared to what Japanese people earn on average. And also there's a much, much lower expectation of what you need to do because of the work-life balance thing. So I would kind of advise people, if you're a foreigner, even if you speak fluent Japanese, avoid at all costs working for a Japanese company. It's basically going to suck. Like, even the sort of famous trendy ones, I know for a fact suck, like Rakuten and those kind of people who pretend to be like sort of progressive and stuff like that. If you can, you'd be shocked if you moved from Amazon, I think, and went to Rakuten. Like, it'd be a totally different culture. I think a lot of people will appreciate that. Just generally, I've lived here a long time. I literally don't know any single foreigner who has like a positive, like a really I love working for, I don't know, like Seibu Shinkin Bank or something. Like, no one says that. Like, they're just treading water until they can get a better offer at a foreign bank. But a lot of foreigners have sort of done what I've done. And it's always, in my opinion, almost all the certain time, it's just replicating something that's done elsewhere, but doing it here domestically. So a lot of my most successful friends just did like headhunting recruiting, like aggressive recruiting, because there was no such industry. Like, because Japanese have this way of thinking, like, no, you work for the same company forever. So why would that service, you know what I mean? It just wouldn't occur to you that service would even be necessary or make a lot of sense. But I know so many people have made tons of money just doing effectively like headhunting and recruitment. In Japan, you want to avoid, like I just said, working at a Japanese company for all costs. So I would say it's much better to try to do something on your own. Japan is like set up as a sort of egalitarian society. So it's a lot easier to be a small business person. There's a lot of benefits to being a small business owner. A lot of tax breaks, a lot of stuff that kind of does make it nice to have your own business compared to just working like a sort of 9 to 5. And remember, like, if you work in Japan, the work-life balance is 0. No one's taking time off for their kids' like births. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a woman, it's going to be super tough if you want to have a family, because they, even though legally you can take leave and stuff like that, it's effectively frowned upon, which is like awkward. I also think it's really hard, especially if you're a woman, it's much, much harder anyway, to have a successful career here at a Japanese company. It's changing slowly, but they're still like decades behind anywhere else. So especially if you're a woman, I'd say like, yeah, doing your own thing is much, much better than working for a Japanese company. And that's in general, like the thing about working for yourself is like you're in control of your own destiny. Like win or lose, you know you've done everything you can. Like when you work for a company and you're like, I want this project, I think we should go in this direction, and then you get shouted down or whatever, you're on a project and you're literally doing something you can't disagree with. And then in the end it fails. And you can't be happy because like it's not like you're happy that it failed. But you're also frustrated because you thought of a different avenue which may have been successful. That kind of stuff, you know, just controlling your own destiny, and the fact that the success is really in your hands. Some macro things, I think a lot of small businesses, as we just witnessed through COVID, like, it doesn't matter if you're the best restaurant in the world. Like if you're in California and the government implements that kind of policy, you're just going to go bankrupt. There's just no way. Like you can survive that kind of stuff. So yeah, being a small business owner is kind of scary at times, but I think the overall benefits outweigh the negatives. And I think it also really depends on your personality type. So like there's a lot of people that I would just encourage, do not start your own business. You're not going to be able to handle the pressure and stuff like that and the stress. And it's your personality, right? So, I mean, even I'm fairly outgoing, but I think a lot of times I wish I was a bit more outgoing even. It might be a life period thing where I'm always drawn. I want to spend time with my kids while they're young. And that's a really hard balance because, you know, especially in this kind of industry where I'm trying to sell like beverages. Like I really would love to be going out and meeting my clients much, much more often. But if I do that, then like, yeah, plus all the other shit that I have to do, it's just like, I'm never going to be at home ever. So yeah, I try to balance that as much as possible. What else? Yeah, I guess that's probably a pretty good answer.